Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Lucas. What's up, gentlemen?
Hey.
How's it going? Glad to be here.
Jay's out this week.
Yes.
But we have still three. We are three. So, Lucas, glad you could join us this week. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Yeah. Had a fun skirmish tournament this last weekend. So it's been fun rolling some more real dice and prep for LVO. So that was a good time.
Awesome. Well, we will talk about that in just a minute. And we're also going to the tier listing that we did for Empire last week was well received and also fun. So we're going to do that for the Rebels today. And we're going to talk about that skirmish tournament. We're going to hit a little bit of an Invader League update because we do have a top 8 now. But first, Mike, you got any housekeeping for us?
I absolutely have some housekeeping.
Housekeeping!
So we have box 4 for Stormtide coming out. It's actually shipping pretty much as this podcast is released. It's our quarter 2 Dark Abyss expansion, which includes a lot of awesome, cool, crazy content. So be on the lookout for that. You can still subscribe to Stormtide with the coupon code Turkey Time, all lowercase, all one word, for I believe it's 10% off your first order of Stormtide. So be on the lookout for that. Also, make sure you check out our Patreon at patreon.com/thefifthtrooper if you are looking to support us or want to listen in to our After Dark podcast. We're going to have a Q&A coming up. We have yet to announce the date and time for it, but it should be towards the end of this month. Outside of that, Lucas, do you want to pump your Twitch a little bit real quick?
Yeah. My Twitch is at Technophobia, TEKNOFOBIA. And yeah, I haven't been able to stream too many games yet. Been quite busy lately, but hoping to in the near future. Awesome. Then, right, you can also find me at the Fifth Trooper blog. Recently put out my tier list about Empire, and so I go into some details on the different units there.
And he knows what he's doing. He is the best Imperial player here at the Fifth Trooper Network.
Yeah, apparently. I want to clarify yet again, I did not call myself that.
The best monikers are the ones that others give you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that was super fast.
Yeah, it turns out when Jay's not here, it's
yeah, but he's not
pretty quick.
The whole time.
Jay's a passionate man.
He is.
All right. Well, let's hit your skirmish tournament first, Lucas.
Yeah, so our skirmish tournament was called Kyber Combat because it required everyone to bring some form of a lightsaber. So, try out some of the most iconic characters. And so I ended up bringing a Vader list. I brought Operative Vader with all the works, Force Push, Force Choke, Into the Fray, and Tenacity. 2 dewbacks with Tenacity, a Full Snow with a Flamethrower, a Naked Storm, and a Naked Officer. And so that rounds out at a 499 6X. And so my general thoughts for skirmish.
The fact that that's 600 points is really silly, but continue.
500.
500. Sorry, 500 points
Yeah.
is super silly.
My general thought with skirmish is it's a pretty swingy game. And so this was just like, how can I make the biggest alpha strike, and new ways to motivate them with dewbacks is what I came up with that, right? On that turn, they move almost to range 4 and can hit with 7 dice. So it's a pretty devastating hit when you only have 500 points on the table. And we had a great turnout. We had about 10 people, and we actually had someone from Japan. This guy, Nathan, was visiting. So we had our farthest international player I've had before. But first round, I played against a local guy, Carter, and he was also playing an Empire list. He was playing with Callus Vader. And so I was able to grab a win in this one, essentially new ways to motivate them. Spiked the ball with 2 dewbacks, and he had some core troopers, and their red staves fell out. So my dewbacks essentially one-shotted 2 of his units on turn 2. So that was a pretty brutal one. but it was a fun game in the end. Was able to grab it. Second one was against Larry, who's another local guy, and he was playing Gar with Obi-Wan and clones. And this one, Vader did a little bit of hitting himself in the face against Obi-Wan. So I was able to go in with Vader, and against red saves, Vader just one-shots a unit, and then Vader smacked Obi-Wan, but dealt no wounds and took 3 wounds from Obi-Wan. So that one hurt pretty bad. But the dewbacks ended up mulching everything else while those two kind of fought back and forth. And so despite Obi-Wan whooping Vader, the dewbacks put in work. And then after that, we had 3 2-0s. One was my brother, myself, and then David LeBlanc. And so David LeBlanc and I got paired up. And so he was able to snag it in the end. He had a, what was it? It was Maul and General Grievous. And so on turn 1, he deployed forward with Maul, burst of speeded in. And I was like, oh, my dewbacks and Vader are going to eat this guy alive. And first turn, I was able to get Maul to 1 health. And then on turn 2, I did a total of 21 wounds or 21 hits to Maul. And Maul did not go down until the 22nd hit, which was really brutal. So a full turn of 2 dewback hits. One was double aimed from the officer. Vader hit, and it was the implacable turn. So Vader hit him twice. And on the final hit with Vader, finally finished him off with implacable. So that was a pretty brutal one. And then Grievous dove in and one-shotted Vader after that. And so that was pretty much game at that point. So David LeBlanc took it, and then my brother actually also went undefeated. So a shout out to James or Wamsley on the Discord. And so this completed, if you guys know David LeBlanc, this completed his triple crown of Legion podcasts. He beat Keegan from Legion 99 before, and then, some guy from Stabcast. I think his name was Tim.
Some guy from Stabcast.
Some guy from Stabcast. And then I got assigned the 5th trooper for that one. So shout out to David. He grabbed it in the end, but it was a really great time. Roll some dice. But my main takeaway with that is dewbacks are pretty sweet. And even though it was just skirmish, right, that going almost range 4 in 1 turn with a melee unit is pretty brutal with that new ways to motivate them. And especially if you go last, right, you can get over range 1. If you go last with them, 2 speed 1 movements. And then so you can roughly close a gap if you last first of almost range 6, which is like the entire table.
So you're telling me he rolled 21 of 22 blocks?
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
Multiple people coming around.
Did he have any dodge tokens during any of this?
He did. So he was rolling surges too.
I just even if you
still
have dodge tokens, if you roll 22 hits in the Maul, he still on average dies when he's at full health.
So he had 1 health, and it was like roll 6 hits with the dewback. Okay, he dodged 1 down to 5, and then it was like all blocks. I'm like, okay, I still got dewback and Vader implacable, gonna hit twice. Next dewback swings in. I think I got 5 hits. He had a second dodge because it was his card that gives him a dodge, and he took the dodge action that turn. Same thing, all blocks. I'm like, all right, Vader's gonna hit him twice. He's going down very soon. Vader hits. He has into the fray, so he's got all these surges this whole time stacking. Vader hits, full save. Second hit, Vader hits for another 6, and so he rolls it, and he got 1 blank in that roll. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I was 1 dice off of 2 full dewbacks and 2 Vader hits off of not killing that Maul.
Silly.
Yeah. So I think he went and played the lottery after that with that good luck.
Yeah. It seems like he already won the lottery. So
yeah.
All right. Well, sounds like it was a good time.
Yeah, super fun. Glad to see everyone in person. And David is a great guy, so I was happy to lose to him.
Awesome. I love the concept of like a lightsaber only or some other kind of themed skirmish tournament.
Yeah, so speaking of David, I actually stole that idea from him. He's a TO for one of our other local shops, and so he was doing stuff where like did a skirmish event where you required heavies for it, so everyone had to have a heavy in the unit. And so I think especially for new players, it's kind of a fun way to spice it up or force a certain archetype at the event.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. All right, let's hit Invader League real quick.
Sure, let's do it.
So we do have a top 8. Those players real quick, let me just rattle them off. Our ASEP, that's Jace, Babette, myself, Orchimedes, Cat in a Lettuce Hat, aka Florf the Dwarf, Bantha Legion, Seth the Math, Dacavello, and Snyder. So those are your top 8 for Invader. It's a almost even faction split, the extra faction being Republic. So there are 3 Republic, that is, 2 Rebels, 2 droids, and then 1 Empire player. So,
and just to be clear, this is pre-points and erratas and stuff before people are like, oh my god, Republic's still good, which they may be, but definitely not on the results of this tournament.
Yeah, this is so it is. There are 2 changes from the errata / points updates that are being used for elims, and that is the turn 0 changes, the 4 card flip, and then the red player picks table side. But yeah, the points and the errata and all that are not. And all 3 of those GAR lists do have Rex in them, so including mine, which is not a clone list.
Turns out, Call Me Captain with Wookiees is pretty degenerate.
Really
pretty sweet. Rip that combo, sadly.
No,
it still works.
It still
Nothing
works.
changed about that one.
I thought, Call Me Captain. Sorry, I was thinking.
Call Me Captain does not require you to put an order on your Wookiees.
Nor does it require them anything to be clone troopers.
Yeah.
I think the change you're thinking of is they made Take That Clankers.
Yeah, Take That Clankers is clone only now.
Which definitely nerfs the Wookiee Rex list a little bit.
It does a little bit, although I've been finding that I've actually only played Take That Clankers in one of my 3 games so far. And it was pretty good in that one, but like generally speaking, I've been starting so close that like I just don't have time to play it. If you put the right deployments in your deck with Wookiees, you can usually, and with recon intel and or scouting party, you can like do a move, shoot, range 2 shot on the first turn or the second turn usually. So
yeah, I mean, scouting party plus the Wookiees really gets you close very quickly.
Sure does. Yeah, scout 2 Wookiees. Pretty good. So yeah, I think that my list is like 820 points or something after the changes, but I don't know. It is like possible to do it still, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, I play Florf. I guess it will be tonight by the time you listen to this podcast.
You're playing on Wednesday.
Wednesday at 9.
All right. Hopefully that's televised.
It is being streamed by Timbo.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
I don't remember his Twitch, but Timbo something.
It's like 8,700 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be on the live stream thing on the Discord somewhere. So yeah, Florf is playing Rexstar, like clone-based Rexstar, except he has 1 unit of ranged Wookiees. So
well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. If you get in there, you should mulch them, but we'll see. Right, that is a big if,
especially on Edu, which is kind of like a football field. So we'll see. I'm not super excited about it, but anyway, yes, if the Wookiees get in, that will be a thing, but it's a big if. All right, should we do Rebel tier action?
Yeah, let's do some tier list action. We got a lot of people agreeing and disagreeing. This is an open forum for everybody to have a great conversation. So everything expressed here is an opinion, and I'd like to just stress that.
Everything expressed on this show is an opinion.
Yeah.
We are Legion pundits, if that's a thing. So yes, that's what we do. All right.
Okay.
Let's
before we start, I just want to run through the tier list of
Sure.
like how we're gonna rank things again.
Yep, please do.
We cool with how we did it last time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So categories. First category is S, which is just like bonkers, overpowered. You should always take this in every list. Units that we put in that category last time were like operative Vader, for Empire.
I think just Vader and operative Vader and Duke, right?
That possibly there might have been 1 or 2 other units. Below that is A, which is your really good units that are just generally seen in the faction a lot. I don't exactly remember what we classified as A's last time, but anyways, these are your above average, should probably be in every list, but aren't like super broken. Then there's our B's, which are above average. They, they're above average, not super crazy. We have our C's, which are blah. They're fine. You can take them in whatever list you want, but not a big deal either way. There are D's, which are below average, and which you probably shouldn't take them, but if you feel like playing them, go for it. And then there are F's, and F's you should never ever play ever. I think we categorized general viewers and e-webs in the F category last time.
Yeah, I think I put the Gav down there too.
That's possible. So
yep. Yeah, and some of these, like, just because something is a C doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it. At least if you're going down there, it just might be something that could actually be pretty good, but in like the right build where you need to support it with something else.
Yeah, probably like situationally, like you've got to, it's not always good. You have to work to make that unit like a better piece than normal. Whereas like the B's and up are kind of like, if you put these units in your army, you're going to be happy with them generally always.
Yeah, anything that's a C, right? It has to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have its own merit, isn't super strong. It has to do something particular.
But that particular thing might be something that is like an important, useful piece in a competitive list.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do it by rank as we did last week. So let's just roll through. Commander. I'm going to just go with the order here that they're on Legion HQ.
Yeah, I think that's a fine thing to do.
All right. Cassian.
So this is a Cassian K2 combo.
Let's consider K2 as part of this combo.
Yeah. Lucas wants to start us off.
Yeah, I think he is a solid A tier.
Okay. I'm gonna go with B. I think he's definitely above average, but I think these days Rebels can be doing better than Cassian, frankly.
I'm gonna say like a B plus.
Wishy-washy. First one in, and you're already like, maybe B, A, yeah.
Something around here.
He's a really solid piece with good command cards and consistent damage. He definitely took a hit with the AA5 timing changes.
Mm-hmm.
The Cassian K2 combo was silly with like 4 free aims at the start of every turn on both of them. Now it's just 4 free aims somewhere over the course of the turn. But yeah, I mean, he's got like great consistent damage against all targets, including against armor, because of marksman and because of his spears. Same with K2. K2 clearly doesn't have marksman, but he's got surge hit and lots of aim access, and surge crit. So and K2 is also pretty good in melee, you know.
Yeah, I sort of feel like the best thing about Cassian is that he brings K2 at this juncture, just like at least in contrast to like the other options, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Cassian still pairs really nicely with Wookiees, which is, you know, one of the top choices. So for that reason, I think that's why I put him in there. He's a great commander, and like Wookiees is one of the things he synergizes quite nicely with.
For sure. Yep. He synergizes with a lot of stuff, really.
Yeah.
You know what, Lucas, you've talked me into it. I'm going to agree with you and say A.
Heck yeah.
Whoa. I'm staying as B. I think he's fine. Yeah.
All right. The new Han Solo.
I'm going to go with a C.
I think B.
I'm going to also go with a B. The buffs, like his cost is the same, but the buffs here are extremely significant between low profile and steady. Like those are amazing buffs.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I sort of see Han in a very similar situation as like Han and Callus do very similar things. They're clearly in different armies. but their command suites are like their 2 and 3 pips are both geared at being very controlly. Their 1 pips are both geared at allowing you to go first, right? Like as far as their command hands go, they do similar things. Clearly, they're not exactly on parity, but ISB investigation is very similar to what Change of Plans does. The timing is different, and clearly one's more proactive, the other one's more reactive. I just I don't know if this is really enough to make him good, particularly when he's got to compete with Cassian basically at the same points value.
You can take them both.
You can, but I'm not sure that's good either. But
there are lists where you can take. I was actually doing this today. You can take Cassian, K2, Han, Chewie, 3 core units, R2, and 3 loaded Wookiee units.
You definitely can't take Chewie, K2, and R2 in the same list.
Oh, I'm sorry, not R2. No, that would be too many things.
Yes.
I don't know. I worked it out such that worked. It might only be 2 loaded Wookiee units. Anyway,
Okay.
It's a lot of things.
Sure.
And you can take all of them. So.
Yeah, and I think reckless diversion, like in a Wookiee world too, is decent, especially since Han is, a little bit tougher to shoot since he has a low profile. Or you could chuck that on like a Chewbacca and Han, and that means like your Wookiees can kind of unopposed rush in. All right, to me, that seems like a pretty decent combo.
Yep.
All right, Han can also follow up with your Wookiees at a similar range band. I guess the one tough part for Han is, right, he's best against red saves, which I don't think that's something Rebels are particularly struggling with. Right, I feel like everything else is already really great against red saves, and so that's what he really dominates against, but like you're kind of just hedging for something you're already good against.
He's really freaking good against red saves, though.
He totally is, but so are Wookiees,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
Wookiees or Castian.
I would strongly consider just taking him with Wookiees and seeing how that works out. And just like you run up against any red save list and they just pick up their models and go home, basically.
Yeah, that'll be super fun for your opponent.
I'm just saying, that's a lot of Pierce.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of those because Empire is seeing a resurgence. So
Yep.
I want him to be a B. Let's put it that way.
You can want him to be a B all you want. That man is still a C.
All right, we'll see. We will see.
We'll have to see, because like I haven't seen.
We
him
will
since
see.
Changes.
All right, Jin.
I'm gonna go with a D. I don't know. D maybe could be a C. I don't know. I don't think. I mean, at 90 points, she definitely is like. Think about it, but again, like you put her up against Cassian or Lando or Han, and it's just like I don't know why I would take her.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's kind of D for me as well. Like she's a fine unit, but Rebels, just like you said, have so many competitive choices in that slot that I feel like you're kind of like you'd rather have anything else in that slot, basically, like Han, Lando, Cassian. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could take like a third commander, and use her as like a, just like a tough 90-point infiltrating unit, in addition to some of these other commanders, I think that'd be interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna go with D also, just because she's competing with Lando and Han and Cassian.
Yeah, I actually think it's like the Rebels definitely have this problem the most, but they basically like Cassian, Han, Jin, Lando, and Leia are all like super close together in cost, and their command cards clearly do different things, but like they're not that different as they play on the table as far as like they're all like most of them shoot range 2, some of them have like a gun that shoots a range 3, but it's not that much better. I don't know. They're very all low impact ranged pieces for the most part. Some of them are better at it than others, but I feel like Jin does none of it better than anybody else. is my main issue with Jyn.
Yeah, I feel like it's the example, like you would never bring Chewbacca if Chewbacca was also a commander, because you'd have to compete with them. But like you bring Chewbacca because he's an operative, and so a slightly less competitive slot.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Because I think the one thing she does do better than those three we listed, Lando, Han, and Cassian, is she's a fair bit tougher than they are. But she also has generally worse command cards, with the exception of her 3-pip. And her damage is like substantially worse. So
yeah, and I also like one of my main issues with all the rebel commanders that are in this slot is that they all just like die to a lightsaber like instantaneously. Like if any of them get touched by a lightsaber in melee, they just poof, gone.
Yeah,
and Jin's not really all that different in that capacity.
No, like Danger Sense does work in melee, but it's still white saves, and there's just extra blocks that are going to get pierced, basically.
Yeah.
So. All right. Speaking of Lando.
Yeah, I'll go with a strong B on Lando. I think he's good. I think for me, he's the only real choice versus Cassian. I think I'm most probably still taking Cassian most of the time, but Lando is at least interesting, and I also think that he enables some Rebel Hero Hammer style things, which I think is fun. So I'm on B for Lando.
Yeah, I agree. B for the same reasons you said. I feel like Cassian edges him out slightly, but contingencies, puts him in a unique slot for hero hammer lists.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. B. No controversy on Lando, apparently.
Nope.
All right, Leia.
So people aren't going to like this, but I feel obligated to enter Leia in at the F category because we entered Veers in at the F category. And I think she basically has the same problems as Veers. She's got one more command card than Veers does. That's useful. But yeah, I'm on principle, Leia's an F.
So I'm going to say D for one main reason. Same things, that the rebel officer just edges her out and is the same thing, but basically cheaper. With the low profile change, her 1-pip is uniquely good at still picking out strike teams. I think the one caveat with that is I don't know how much we're going to see strike teams in the current meta. But I think for that reason, it makes her a little better than F. I do see that there's some use for her. I don't think she's
Yeah, and you say that she has one more useful command card than Veers. No Time for Sorrows is still one of the best 2-pips. It's
yeah, that's what
2-pip.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, her 3-pip is a dead card.
But, yeah, totally. But like, it's kind of hard to undersell. Like, if you take all 6 of Veers and Leia's command cards combined, No Time for Sorrows is the best one by like a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna say she's a D for that reason, because her command cards generally are just better on the back of, Lucas, as you mentioned, coordinated bombardment benefiting from her sharpshooter too, but also just how good No Time for Sorrows is. All right, Luke Skywalker, commander.
Say it with some enthusiasm, Kyle.
I can open this one because I've been making you guys go first.
Go for it.
This might be kind of controversial. I'm gonna say he's an F.
Ooh. You're gonna have to give me. So my take on Luke Skywalker commander is that he's a C. I still think he's fine. I don't think he's the best option. I don't think he's the worst. I still think he's more than reasonable coming in at 6 command cards at 160 points, then can SOS stuff off the board and give you access to force push and all that jazz in a faction that doesn't really have access to those types of effects outside of the operative version of him.
Yeah, I think I'm similar, C or D, but I have a feeling I know why Kyle said F. I think the burst of speed, it makes him really great since he doesn't have Master of the Force, right? It's for 163 with all that is a pretty nice package. But the tough part is he's a unique character, and taking him means you can't take the other Luke. So that's what I think for me is more around a D for the drawback that operative Luke is just so good.
Yeah, I mean that's basically why I'm giving him an F. Like he's only 35 points less than operative Luke, and operative Luke is so much better. It's not even close. So that is an interesting point about burst, because it's not uncommon to just, if you take Commander Luke, to just leave that second force slot open. But you can use the same argument with operative Luke. You know, you've got that third force slot that's basically like often left open, so you might as well throw 3 points on there.
Yeah.
And, like if I'm taking Luke, I'm going to just find 35 points somewhere to take operative Luke every single time. So
Yeah, right. Even just the training difference is huge, since operative Luke can get tenacity going.
yeah, I mean it's not just like it's the training slot, it's the extra force slot, it's master of the force, it's disengage, it's the better dice,
Health, courage,
extra health, extra courage. Like,
yeah. I think I'm convinced. I think operative Luke seems fine as a character, but just I guess when you compare him to, or sorry, Commander Luke seems fine, but we compared him to operative Luke, like you said, for 35 points for all that. Yeah, I think I'm moving him down to F. You've convinced me.
all right.
Well, it's just like, yeah, for 35 points, cut a heavy somewhere and just take operative Luke, you know?
Cut an activation, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, just make it happen. It's anyway. I mean, this would be like if you had a choice between, you know, the old operative Vader at 155 and the new operative Vader at whatever he currently costs. You know, like it wouldn't even be a contest.
Yeah.
So anyway, Rebel Officer.
I think S tier. It's just super cheap. Does something like pretty good things. Pairs with pretty much all the commanders and units in Rebels.
So I put the Imperial Officer in S, and I still fundamentally believe the Imperial Officer is an S. I think the Rebel Officer is more of a C now, just because the list that you would take the Rebel Officer in, I feel like you pretty much have a field commander to do that duty now. Like I feel like the list that we're taking Rebel Officers were basically like air speeders and all that junk. And I feel like they're just going to take Wedge or Shriv and be happy about it.
Agree with everything you just said.
So C.
I'd even honestly probably put him down to a D.
Ooh. Lucas,
Dang.
Defend your position of an S. Go ahead.
Well, I don't play Rebels that much, so I'm not convinced after your points you made.
Yeah,
Right.
I still think it's a very inexpensive activation.
It definitely is.
I guess when you got heavies that are 130 points, like the airspeeder or the bus under 100, I'm used to, you know, Empire, even with the changes, still Wise ATST is like 120. But when you can get those field commanders for so cheap, makes sense.
Yeah, I also think that as far as abilities go, Take Cover 1 is a lot worse than Spotter 1.
It is.
In most situations, it definitely combos with like, oh, you've got Luke or whatever. I can throw a dodge token on Luke. That's fun and great and whatever. But overall, just being able to hand out aim tokens is way better than dodge tokens.
Yeah, I guess also since you're not right, people aren't taking many heavies in their core right now for Rebels. That brings down the value a bit as well.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Shall we move on to the operative slot?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Chewbacca.
I'm gonna say D, maybe C. I think the issue with the operative slot is that he's the worst of the 5. I think. No, there's 5. You're muted, Kyle. A.
Yeah, my bad. No, you're right. It is 5. I was not counting K2.
Right.
Yes.
K2 doesn't show up on Legion HQ unless Cassian's
Yeah, it is
5.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think Chewie's the worst of the 5. And the unit that he pairs with Han, I also think is not super stellar. So
I'm gonna say B. I agree that I think K2 edges them out, and I think they fill a similar role. But I think if you're not running Cassian, Chewbacca is a good proxy for that, right? He still runs well alongside Wookiees, can protect some focus pieces, and he's not that expensive, right? Only 90 points for his kit isn't too bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. He's reasonably durable. He's got Guardian, which combos with some pretty interesting things now, especially like low profile. He's got a good offensive profile. You don't really need his command cards.
though, like, come on. I wish we had command cards we could actually play.
That'd be great if, I mean, Chewie needs like his own set of just like Chewbacca command cards.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Just, let Chewbacca do Chewbacca things just by himself.
Yeah, I like the idea of like, him working with people. I sort of wish that like you could like have teamwork whoever was on the card, like like it didn't necessarily have to be like teamwork on Solo
or maybe like there's a better version of the card if it's with a specific character, but there's like a watered down version that you can use with any character.
Yeah.
Or even I feel like if it's gonna be limited to one other character, I feel like you have to get a kind of a busted effect for that cost of like each of your command cards is tied to someone else. Because like by the nature of it, the more other people you bring with Chewbacca, and now there's more command cards competing for those slots. So those other people are losing value by the nature of you like bringing multiple heroes. So to make it worth it, right? You want those cards to be super strong since you're paying for other heroes that you're not going to bring their command cards.
I mean, in fairness, the cards are pretty good.
They are.
It's in my experience, it has just been a liability to have command cards tied to a 9 wound hero who doesn't surge with a weight defense tie. I don't know. Like that's the other issue. I would be way more about Chewbacca if he just like surged to block.
He'd be ridiculously tough though, especially
he'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. For me, he's like 9 wounds that just like evaporate very quickly.
Yeah, they definitely can. All right, Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight.
I'm gonna go with A.
Yeah, I want to say S, but I just think since like Wookiees and so much immune pierce melee is good right now, I think it bumps it down to an A.
I'm gonna go with B.
Okay, all right. That's not where I thought you were going to come in on this.
Where'd you think I was going to come in?
I thought you were going to be like, oh, S, he's my boy.
He is my boy. But I'm realistically saying B. There's 2 reasons for this. One is just that there's so much like immune pierced melee right now that he's sort of uniquely positioned amongst Force users to just chop things down with Son of Skywalker, right? Like he's still the only Force user that can basically one-shot a Wookiee unit, or can realistically one-shot a Magna Guard unit, or a dewback. But at the end of the day, like I think I'd rather just have 2 Wookiees.
100%
for that cost.
100%.
But also the turn 0 changes, particularly like the table side thing, really hurts Force user, like quote unquote traditional Force user lists, because those lists tend to rely on area control, which requires 2 things. It requires a specific set of objectives and deployments, and it requires you to be able to use the terrain to, position your lightsaber user somewhere around the area that you're forcing your opponent to care about. And those 2 things are decoupled from each other now. So I think sort of all Force users got a little bit of a hit with that change. Some of them are better positioned than others to weather that storm, and that's why I'm still rating him as a B instead of something lower.
Sure.
Because he can still take bursts of speed. He can still get around the table. He can be like an aggro Force user if you need him to be, which is not true of some of the other ones. But I'm going to say B.
So I wanna bring something up here. This is a side tangent.
Okay.
But I think this is a good space to maybe have the conversation.
Yep.
All right. So Operative League is 195 points.
Yep.
Great. Wookiee Warriors with a bowcaster are what?
If you give them the upgrades that you need to give them, the full Monty is 110.
Okay, great. Fundamentally, I feel like those units, when you boil them down to like a very like kind of like base level, they do very similar things in melee. Hear me out here, okay?
Okay. I'm hearing you
before you start scoffing.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have the Wookiees have similar effective health. I haven't done the math. I mean, we can do the math. What? So Luke is 14 health with no dodge tokens. He generally has some dodge tokens, so we'll give him the benefit. Let's say 20-ish with all the dodges from his command cards. And the Wookiees are what, 12? They probably
14.4.
They have Into the Fray now though too. So
you're giving them tenacity.
You're not giving them
push still.
Right. You're giving that to Magnus.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So all right. So they're like 14. So a little worse on the effective health, but it's worth noting that like they're way less susceptible to being like diced, right? Like a wound hitting your Wookiees is like way less of a deal than a wound hitting Luke. They smash in melee way harder than Luke ever does, with the exception of the SOS turn.
It's actually not that far off, because a full Wookiee unit, if you have all your models, which is the other thing, is Luke is the same effectiveness whether he's on 7 wounds or 1 wound.
Okay, but but 2 Wookiees are kind of comparable at 4 black and a red.
Well, but Luke would be 7 black and a red with Pierce 2. And your Wookiees are.
That's not relevant to the conversation. Let's continue.
Okay.
All right.
It is.
It is in contrast to Luke, but I want to open up this discussion as like a conversation about things with lightsabers in general. And Luke happens to have very good lightsabers. So let's put that on the bench for a second. But I guess my fundamental question is, Luke has more effective health, but not a ton more. And it's way less, and every Force user is like that. They have similar melee profiles, at least when they're at full health. And as they degrade, like you still have to do like 6 wounds to Wookiees before they like don't have a lightsaber anymore, right? If you've done 5, they're still rolling 6 black and 1 red in melee with Pierce, right? And so my question is, what justifies paying an extra 80 to 100 points for Force slots on a lot of these units when you could just take a Wookiee?
Yeah, I think something to point out too is like 2 Wookiees basically cost the same as Operative Luke.
And clearly, like you can't take a 4th Wookiee, so like there's the like whole like, okay, you could have 3 Wookiees and Luke, but again, I just want to like just open the conversation up to be about like what makes Force users worth their cost when you can have a Wookiee unit that does a lot, not all, but a lot of the same things as far as being a linebacker, being able to deal with other melee threats. They also have a ranged profile attack that's better than most lightsaber users out there, with the exception of like Palpatine and Dooku, and but like they're so much more versatile in a lot of ways than these users, and they're so much cheaper.
I actually think they're less versatile, other than the ranged profile. Just having played both of them at this point extensively, Wookiees kind of have one mode, and that mode, is the W key. You can play kind of defensively with them, but it's not as easy. They're less hard. They're harder to hide behind terrain. They're more vulnerable to getting chipped. They don't have force push to control the position of the units they're engaging. So just like anecdotally, my experience with Wookiees versus Force users is that Force users are much easier to play as like a defensive / area control piece. where Wookiees kind of just lock you into that, like, charge forward style. And I think that defensive control piece thing used to be more valuable than it is now. So maybe now the conversation is like, in a game where you want to just kind of go out there and kill your opponent, maybe they're really not that different. And like, why would you pay for a force user? But it's also like, it's sort of easy to use not lethal duelists there as like a shorthand for they always have Pierce. In my experience, they often don't, because you don't, you use offensive push the first time, which often is on a bowcaster shot instead of on melee, and then you don't have it up for the rest of the game, so you have to actually take an aim action, which occasionally happens, but it's definitely not every time.
Sure.
And the difference between Pierce 1 and Pierce 2 is pretty big too.
It is, no doubt. I guess fundamentally, I just like when we're we graded Luke at a B and an A and instead of an S, and to me, a big part of that is like, why would I take Luke ever when I can just take 3 squads of Wookiees? And I also think that like I think you're shorting Wookiees on the whole defensive control thing, because we used to use them that way. Like, we used to put squads of Wookiees in our lists to act as linebackers, and similarly to how we now they might not be as good. They're clearly not as good, and I think that overall they're not the best thing at any of the things that the force users do. My question fundamentally is, why are force users paying 70 points more on average?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's force powers and command cards.
Yeah,
it's the short answer to that question. Now, whether that should be worth 70 more points nowadays in the style of game that we have is debatable.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would like to pose. Yeah.
It's also worth pointing out that when they were used as like a one-off linebacker style unit, it was usually used in conjunction with a force user, not in place of one.
That is also fair.
And again, in a defensive / area control style list, typically.
I think in some ways that says more about how the game is shifting right now, that a lot of the top units just want to, steamroll you. And so things that were more objective focused, whether it's, gun lines that want to be going back and forth and pivoting off the center, force users who want to be, playing defensively potentially, and then just nuking something on the last turn and pushing stuff off an objective. All those things are starting to lose value when potentially on turn 2, or some of these lists, like you said, with Rex and Wookiees on turn 1, you already just have melee threats bearing down. It's like, who's going to have models left at the end?
Yeah, and you actually did touch on, besides just the defensive area control piece, force users are generally just better at objectives, like almost every objective.
Yeah,
because of force push and because of their mobility too. So not that Wookiees aren't also mobile, they're mobile in a different way that I find is like more useful for rushing things, but less useful for objective play, like grabbing a box and getting away with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I find that force users are in a way more like bursty in what they do, if that makes sense. Like Son of Skywalker, for example, no Wookiee is going to keep up with that damage output on that turn. But since games are so aggressive and you're fighting from so early on, it's almost that a lot of these units that just are more efficient and do more damage point for point over the course of the game are getting more play.
Yeah, that's another interesting point. In a game where you're like positioning for 2 to 3 turns, and then you have like, the action compressed into like turns 3 through 6, basically, you'd probably rather have a force user. But in a game where you're going from the word jump and you're just grinding it out for 6 turns, then maybe you want like a Wookiee.
Yeah, I'm increasingly feeling like if I'm going to pay 80 points more than a Wookiee squad for like a Luke or something, like I don't then want to also have to pay for force powers, because that's really all I'm getting. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel you.
So anyhow, that's my tangent. Thought we could talk about it.
I mean, I think that's a good place to talk about it.
Yeah,
I thought so too. That's why I brought it up.
Yep. All right, R2D2 now 55 points.
I think A for me. Makes it a bit more expensive, but like R2 still just synergizes so well with like everything Rebels are doing, whether it's air speeders or just Wookiees slamming in your face. right? It's a lot easier to score a secret mission when you got a pile of Wookiees bearing down on you.
I think he's S, particularly if you pair him at any point in time with Shriv. It's stupid. It's really stupid.
Yep. I'm also going to say S. The 10 points is certainly better than not changing him at all, but coupled with the fact that basically people aren't bidding anymore, like it just cuts into your bid. That's it. It doesn't fundamentally change how R2 works, and you don't need to bid as much now to get the same benefit. So yeah, that 10 points is like essentially not meaningful when everybody just cuts their bids. Yeah, I'm gonna go with S. Nothing really fundamentally changed about how he works. So Sabine.
I'm gonna go with A. I think she's just as good as Operative Luke. It from like a tier standpoint. She's much cheaper. She just does so much for 125 points. It's a kind of incredible, frankly. Great at objectives, great command cards. Just all around super great unit. Much better than Boba Fett by leaps and bounds.
I agree. I'd put her in an A too. I'd actually put her higher than Operative Luke because of how much cheaper she is. And she still brings that, to the extent that it's relevant, that good objective play. So, and explosions is really good.
Yeah, I think she's about an A, maybe an A- for me. I could see around B just because, right, her best target is red saves. And as we said, there's not as many red saves. And then if you're putting the dark saber on her, she's still going to get wrecked by Wookiees, even with the dark saber. You know, she can hold up against one Wookiee unit. So I think for me, maybe around B-ish, because for cheaper, right, you can just take Wookiees. But right, if you're already maxing out on those kinds of units, I can see Sabine being really great. She's still a solid unit.
She's at least like, when you look at a Wookiee unit and you look at Sabine, you're like, okay, these are like sort of close in points costs, you know? And you're like,
yeah,
hey,
but
you know,
right, if you bring the dark saber, that brings her up to 140.
that's fair. I almost never do.
It is for me.
Yeah, I never bring the dark saber.
Are you a dark saber man, Lucas?
I'm personally not, but right, like she's much weaker in melee than the Wookiees without the dark saber, right? Like she gets pinned down by a Jedi without the dark saber. You're just taking dodges and trying to survive as long as you can.
I mean, I think if you're running Sabine and you're running the gunslinger version, you're gonna just run her alongside something like Wookiees so that you have something to appeal for her.
It's also worth noting that her electro grappling line is really good right now.
Yes.
Just generically.
Yeah, she's also situational awareness and vigilance is really, really nice on her, right? Since she has jump, she can always get on top of some building or something, and then behind red saves and nimble. It's pretty brutal to take her out.
Yep. All right, core.
Yeah.
This might be the most boring slot for Rebels. Fleets.
A. I think A, if you're taking like just bare minimum core units in Rebels, which is I think most lists, I think you should just take 3 fleets and move on with this rank category most of the time, at least nowadays. So I'm in 3 fleets every list as far as Rebels go.
I'm going to say B. I don't think it's quite as one-dimensional as that. I would my personal favorite mix is 1 fleet, 2 rebel troopers. It's nice to have like the flexibility to be able to suppress something at range 3 or just throw some random dice at range 3. And the 1 fleet is kind of enough to like your opponent just kind of forgets about them and they just kind of, you know, do some objectives and then saunter up to the action. And then on like turn 4, you start like slinging 8 white dice and your opponent's like, oh, wow, these guys are existing. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say B. They're perfectly solid.
For me, I think it's B also. some of the reasons that you're saying. I think the reason why I wouldn't say A is one of the reasons why you're taking them is, right, Special Forces is so competitive because of Wookiees, so you don't have many cheap options. And so I think, like, right, you guys are saying most of the time you just want to take naked Rebel Core. I don't know if that's because they're great options. I think it's just because they're the cheapest thing you can take, right? So I think that's B, right? They're
Sure.
good, but they're good because they're cheap.
And somebody's got to repair those evaporators.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Someone's going to play the objectives layer. Wookiees just murder everything.
Evaporator is even in Rebel decks these days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still a good objective.
Yeah, just like when I think of good Rebel lists these days, they've got bombing run and breakthrough in them. So like,
yeah, I mean, you can still like play evaporators as, you know, like an offensive list.
you totally can. I don't know. Seems like maybe they'd want different objectives, but anyhow.
I mean, the reason you play VAPs is because it often ties, and you usually have R2 as rebels.
Mhm.
So, whether you're red player or blue player, you can turn it into a 5-4 game where their win condition is killing R2. Rebel troopers.
D. I'm not. I don't know. They're a D or a C for me. Definitely low on the totem pole.
I think they're B for me. Right. I think you're still running them naked, and it's just nice to have a little more range. So at least you can start, you know, fishing for crits at range 3. Gives you a little more space that they can be safe for objectives. I don't know if right now if you're taking heavies on core in general in Rebels.
I'm going to say B. I think if you are going to take heavies, you're probably running the Rebel troopers with DLTs. But if you're taking naked, it's still just fine. There's a perfectly fine naked unit for 40 points. All right, veterans.
D. I don't know. You can use them to like do Mark II shenanigans, but I haven't really seen people doing that to good effect these days. Mark II is still pretty fragile, so yeah, I'm coming in a D. I'm not about Rebel Core units these days, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me it's a C. For the reason that it is a little cheaper, right, to take a vet and one of the Mark IIs. Can get some activations out, but
it's actually more expensive than just taking
it is
two
more
40-point
expensive?
units. Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
in that case, I think I'm also D.
Yeah, it's 6 more points. 86
Okay.
points for that combo versus 80 points for 2 40-point units.
I will revise. Shows you how often I played with that unit. So I think I'll say D as well.
I'm going to say C because I actually have seen some pretty effective Mark II shenanigans. Maybe some of this goes away with the aim timing on the bus. But like Cassian fire supported by an MK2 when he's got 4 aims is ridiculous. The bus quad laser supported by an MK2 is also really good because it gives it surge crit. So you're talking about 8 surging black dice with impact, 2 and probably 1 or 2 aims. And then Han and Lando are both great when they're fire supported by an MK2. So
I think that's fair. I just like generally the Mark II like requires you to like put it ahead of where the rest of your army would be a lot of times because it's got to like have the face up to do the fire support thing, which means like I don't know. When I've seen the Mark II be excessive, be good, it generally has to be set up in like a scouted forward position, and it feels like it just gets eaten by everything that's going on in the meta right now.
it does. I mean, the extra health is helpful. Like it's this equally durable as Rebel Troopers now.
Sure.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like the best Rebel naked unit. I think the Mark II. The issue is you got to pay 48 points for a naked veteran if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Like I think if you could run Mark IIs on their own, you'd probably just take 3 Mark IIs as your core because they have more dice.
You would, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that you would, simply because they can't grab boxes and they can't do VAPs.
That's true. Yeah, you need some thumbs to do things.
Yeah, you gotta have some thumbs. All right, should we move on to special forces?
Let's do it, because this is where it gets interesting.
I agree. Mandalorian Resistance, Clan Ren.
C. I think you're only taking them if you're taking Sabine, because without retinue, they're not nearly as good. But yeah, they're a very versatile unit when in that circumstance, but I don't think they're like super overpowering or overbearing or anything like that. They're good.
Yeah, I think for me, Clan Ren is probably C. I think Mandalorian Resistance is closer to a D for me right now, just for the fact that they fill a very similar role as Wookiees, and I feel like the Wookiees are just much better at that. But Clan Ren alongside Sabine is great, right? Sabine keeps that nimble going with the dodge the whole time, so it makes them much more durable.
Yeah, I'll say C. I think if you're running Sabine, you're taking them, and if you're not taking them.
Yep.
But they are, they're great at objectives in that context of Sabine, because they are extremely durable. They're substantially more durable than a unit of Wookiees if you're taking that dodge from retinue. And they're really fast.
Super fast.
They're way faster than Wookiees.
Yeah.
They just don't punch quite as hard. So, but they're great for objective play. Super durable, super fast. How about the generic unit? Just Mandalorian Resistance.
Hard F. Hard F. You should never take these. And I feel super strongly about that. This is possibly the worst rebel unit. And I don't think it's close. They, as soon as you lose one dude, which is generally pretty quickly, they get a lot worse. They lose 25% of their attack pool. Even with everybody alive, their attack pool is like not that great for what you're paying. Yeah, can they jump around the battlefield? Sure, but I mean, Wookiees can do that and like take 5 wounds and be fine, whereas Mandos take 2 wounds and you're like, oh, this unit is basically useless. And I think they're terrible. They're god awful. F.
Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, I think D, for the reason that they're really just edged out by Wookiees. I don't know about F, because they still can do some cool stuff with like jetpack rockets. And if you have the backworld medic and on your buses, right, you can support them decently. I think the reason why I say D is they're good if you support them properly, but you can just take Wookiees and you don't need to support them, and they do the same thing but better.
It is worth highlighting that they actually have a similar effective health to Wookiees. It's just that they're so much more dice dependent, whereas Wookiees have essentially only positive variants, right? Like you just expect to fail saves, and then occasionally you roll a save, and it's like, yay, all right. Whereas with Mandos, like you fail 1 save and it's devastating. If you were to roll average dice, they would take roughly the same number of hits to kill as a Wookiee unit, but they're just so much more vulnerable to variants. I'm going to say D, because they do have some good uses with things like jetpack rockets. But yeah, it's just they're like, if you take them, you got to support them with medics, and then you're dumping more points into supporting a unit that is just
and then you got to hope that your medics are near them when you lose a dude,
right.
and you hit the timing right. They're just like, don't throw points, good, like decent points after bad points. Not worth it, particularly in this circumstance. If you want to take a medic, fine, but tank it to heal operative Luke.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Rebel Commandos full unit.
Yeah, I'll say C. I think they're fine these days. I think can take him full unit with the sniper rifles, completely justifiable, a little bit like super core. I don't think you would ever take them because of Wookiees, but yeah. See.
Yeah, I think basically the same thing you said. They seem like a solid unit. I'd love to try them, but I think that pretty much everything in the special forces slot is like just so edged out by Wookiees that it's tough to make a great case for them.
Yeah, I'll say C also. I mean, I think if you're not making a Wookiee list, you could make a strong case for these guys as like activation padding at 48 points. Good objectives, decent courage, reasonably durable for a white save unit because of low profile, and they've got, surging black dice with sharpshooter, so they can sling some decent dice against troopers at range 3.
I think with the changes, they similarly, not as devastatingly, but I think they edge out strike teams for the most part.
I agree. Yeah. How about strike teams?
D, I think. So I don't know where Sab's going to end up yet, but I also think that if you're doing the Sab thing, you should probably be playing Empire. I think. I'm not sure though. I'm gonna go with D. But that's a like question mark. D question mark. They might be a lot lower than that. they might just be enough.
Yeah, I want to say C or D, somewhere around there, because I think, right, you can still try and go for like a high activation airspeeder list, and in that case, it is nice to have some activation padding that can do stuff in between. But I don't know how great that list is compared to just going full Wookiee spam and airspeeders. Right, there's still decent activation padding, so I think around C or D. Not clear which it is for me though.
I'm gonna say C, because I think the Sabs could be pretty good.
So, okay, so here's the thing, right? For 20 extra points per unit, you can just take a naked squad of Wookiees.
I don't. Yeah, but I don't like naked.
I understand you don't
Wookiees
like, but like I think that's an objectively false point. All right. 48 points for 2 white saves with a sniper rifle, or 69 points for 9 white saves with 3 black, 3 white at range 2, 6 black with lethal with duelist and melee. Like, I think naked Wookiees, particularly if you're like doing the activation spam thing, it's a perfectly reasonable option. And I guess we can just talk about Wookiees next.
I think the biggest thing is just right, core troopers are 8 points cheaper, and so I think in many ways, like, you'd rather just take core, just pad out.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Like, I would take these guys if you're filling them out beyond the core that you already have. One thing that's made me sort of wonder as we're going through this discussion is, could like Overwatch lists be a thing again? Because a lot of these lists that we're talking about, like the wiki lists, basically don't have any ranged attacks beyond range 3. Like my SoCal list had 0 ranged attacks beyond range 3.
I mean, your airspeeders rip standby tokens apart.
Well, the airspeeders are also range 3, so you just spend it when they get into range.
For sure. Okay, shoot my armor unit with what is probably something that doesn't have impact, right? Like how many? I mean, I don't know.
There's a fair bit of that out there these days, though.
There is, but like, how many of the things that you put Overwatch on have impact?
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's just a random thought that occurred to me. Like,
yeah. What about with like DTs, maybe Death Troopers? Could you do an Overwatch?
I could see it.
That might be a place
not
where
that
it's
expensive.
decent.
Yeah,
or like
not
shorts.
that expensive. DTs are still so expensive. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I can see it on like shores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a hedge for really aggressive things.
I just, in my experience, standbys are tend to get a lot worse. Like if your opponent can just wait you out or make it so that you don't like that unit just doesn't do anything. Like, yeah, the Wookiees don't get in, but I don't know. They're just gonna run around the table in a different direction.
I think one thing though is typically right. Almost every list had a sniper or range for heavies, and we're in a world where we're talking about that. Like you're probably not taking heavies on a lot of core unless it's shore troopers and stormtroopers. But outside of that, I don't think many other taking long range heavies. And we're, I don't think many lists are bringing snipers as well. So two of the biggest things that strip standbys aren't really played much.
That's totally fair.
So if there's ever a time for that to be a thing, it's probably now.
Yeah, I'm not saying it is a thing, but I think if there's a time for it to be a thing, it could be now.
Yeah, for sure. I think you just take the damage on the first Wookiee squad and let the second and third get in there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if you're not stripping any standbys, your opponent might have like 6 or 7 standbys.
Yeah, but if they've got 7 standbys, you just do nothing and make them basically root their army in place for a turn, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
Move standby.
You can do that the first time, but after that, you're kind of.
Yeah, I know it's not perfect. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
something to think about,
Yeah. I mean, definitely, like people should be taking more standbys for Wookiees, no doubt.
Yeah, even if you don't have Overwatch, you should be like taking the standby action.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And people with Wookiees should be taking standbys, just to be clear. Not that I want to give Wookiee players more ammo in the chamber, but
all right. Pathfinders.
I'm gonna go with C. I think a 1 Bistan unit is like, if you're expecting an armor meta, completely reasonable.
Yeah, I think same. Bistan, I mean, I think even with the points reduction, I don't think POW is playable at all. I think POW is probably like F tier. So, but a 1 of Bistan, he's a great hedge against armor, good against droids. Like has a walloping range 4 dice pool, so it's a nice thing to have with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. See, Piston's decent. All right, Wookiees, melee Wookiees.
S.
All right, let's move on.
But they're shooty Wookiees.
Shooty Wookiees.
A.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with C here. I don't think one of the reasons I think melee Wookiees are so good is because they can flex into being shooty Wookiees. And I feel, and I could be wrong about this, that range Wookiees can't really flex. I mean, into being melee Wookiees, not well, at least. Melee Wookiees at least do both pretty reasonably. One they do exceptionally well. The other one they're like, oh, we still got Pierce, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I still think that they're totally reasonable, but they're definitely not S.
I think they seem like a good unit, but melee Wookiees are just much better. So that's why I put them in A. Right? You can take them and not feel bad. The feels bad is just that you're not taking an S tier unit.
Yeah, I'm gonna say B. I think the Gar Wookiees are a different conversation because of fire support and because of some other things. But these guys really need aims. I think in a world where the bus timing was different, this conversation would be a little different. But yeah, it's their ranged attack is like only basically what you're gaining is the range band because sharpshooter washes out with the better dice of the melee Wookiees. And they don't have charge. They have much worse dice, and they don't have a slot for tenacity. So while they're, moderately better at the range, they're like significantly worse at melee.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if I was trying to like take Wookiees that can shoot things, I think I'd still take regular Wookiees. I don't know. Overall, I think that like there could be like you were talking about Overwatch shenanigans. Wookiee Warrior Overwatch might actually be kind of scary.
That could be kind of interesting.
Like that I could maybe see.
How about standby sharing exemplar Wookiee Warrior Overwatch?
Yeah, I mean, Yoda Anakin shenanigans. I mean, you can't do that in Rebels. You can't do that in Rebels, so no. But
which is why I said I think Gar Wookiees might be higher. Shooty Wookiees.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
All right. Support. ATRTs.
I think C. They're decent armor platform. They're relatively inexpensive. They got okay guns. Yeah, they're around pretty great unit. If you're gonna, I feel like they kind of take the place of a core heavy. I feel like in Rebels right now, right? Instead of a core with a heavy, you'd rather just have an ATRT in most cases. But
I'm gonna go D, borderline F. I think armor is getting good enough that people are taking real answers in things like DSD spider droids, or they happen to have an airspeeder that has impact 3 and surge to crit. And I think in a world where people have any amount of like intentional impact or ion in their list, ATRTs start looking real bad real fast. And I think that's the world we're kind of living in. So I'm gonna go with F, because I don't think you should probably be taking these right now. I think in a world where that's less true, we can have a conversation about it. But I think right now you shouldn't put ATRTs in your list.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was gonna say F for the same reasons. So there's not surging white saves. They just absolutely melt to actual impact weapons. So
yeah, it's just like, oh, you've got an airspeeder, you got 2 airspeeders. Okay, well, this ATRT is dead in 1, maybe 2 attacks. Right? Like,
yeah, you just slag an ATRT a turn when you got 2 airspeeders.
Yeah. And
do you think the armor skew thing isn't something anymore? Taking 3 ATRTs and 2 airspeeders.
I mean, you could, I guess. I could see that working, but like it wasn't great before the errata and before the armor meta, and like nothing about the ATRTs got any better or cheaper. So
yeah.
And now there's just more impact / ion options out there than there were before.
Yeah.
So
And it should be noted, like, ATRTs are one of the vehicle units that like a damage token like cripples. Like,
yes, very bad.
It's once you get like your weapon is either now really bad, you are rallying and only getting 1 action every turn, or in order to move, like, it's just everything's bad, so bad.
All right, the pizza dish, the 1.4 FD laser cannon.
For me, this is a D. It will probably always be a D. It just, because it literally can't move once you put it on the table. Its profile and what it is fine. Sometimes being able to like have a unit move is a very essential part of just playing the game, and not being able to move to me is just a deal breaker. So I'm gonna say D. I don't think it's an F, but I do think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I'm on the F side of it. Just right, since it can't move, you can kind of ignore it to an extent, and depending on cover, right, you can hide from it. It does have Sentinel, which I guess is decent against some aggressive threats, but it still melts to everything. I don't know. I feel like if you're spending that much points, you'd just rather have something else.
Yeah, I'm gonna say F. This gets really hurt by the turn 0 changes, because it's a defensive piece that, like you said, Mike, literally cannot move, and you need to, like, before you even start vetoing cards, you need to know that like you can put it in a spot that's going to be relevant.
Yeah.
And if you don't get to pick your table side and your deployments and your objectives, the chances of that happening are kind of all over the place. So
yeah, it's like, okay, I can like pick my table side, and now we're playing like bombing run. Great. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
right, exactly.
and it's
Yeah.
just like,
Or I can play like a deployment and objective setup that's good for my FD laser cannon, but then you pick the table side and
Right.
like give me the crappy table side. So
yeah. I just
Yeah.
it definitely
it's really
when you could take like a 20-point bid and like ensure that this was gonna be able to with like reasonable certainty that there was gonna be a good place for this. I think it was one thing, but nowadays it's
Yeah,
Now
I
that
know you
that-
guys aren't hot on ATRTs, but like for 10 more points, you can take an ATRT, which has like same attack dice pool, just shorter range, but now you can move and also armor. And I think that's, a lot more value than 10 points.
Yeah, ATRTs can actually kind of flex on objectives. Like if you need to use ATRTs for bombing run or breakthrough, that's the thing you can do. So
yeah, so that's interesting because I would rather have an FD turret than an ATRT like 100% of the time, which is why the ATRT for me is an F and an FD cannon is a D. Thing is, the FD cannon can at least interact with things where they can't interact back some of the time, whereas like an ATRT has to actually close to engagement range.
yeah, I think they're both Fs for different reasons.
Sure, that's very possible.
Tauntauns.
I'm gonna go with D again. I think D, maybe borderline C, in that I think Wookiees do everything that they do better. There are definitely lists that can put Wookiees and Tauntauns in the same list, and in those lists, I think they're probably a C instead of a D. But overall, I don't know why you take Taunts when you can just have Wookiees instead.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about, I think a C, because you can run them alongside Wookiees. I think similar to what you said, Wookiees just kind of edge them out. But you can only take 3 Wookiees, and you can take but you can take more Tauntauns, right? They're different slots. And so I think if you didn't have Wookiees, it'd be a different conversation. They're more B tier. But I say C, because the only place I really see you taking them is if you've already got 3 Wookiees and you want another cheap melee.
This is kind of like the reverse with dewbacks and IRG, right? Like you can't take 5 dewbacks, so you might take like 3 dewbacks and 2 IRG.
Yeah.
Can't take 5 Wookiees, so you might as well take some Tauntauns too.
Yeah.
There are a couple things they are better at than Wookiees. Notably, their engagement and threat range is like significantly farther.
They're very good at harassing, for sure.
Yeah, like they're way more mobile and significantly faster. So, which isn't nothing.
Yeah.
No.
The issue is, right, after that initial ram, they just hit way weaker than Wookiees do, right?
Yep, definitely.
Wookiees, once they're embedded, right, they just continue to tear things apart, whereas Tauns, it's like if you can weather the first hit. But in the case you have Wookiees, right, the Tauns soften stuff up, and you have Wookiees tearing everything apart, so it makes it much easier for the Tauns to peel out and get another ram.
Yeah, it's kind of like Lance cavalry versus like heavy infantry,
Mhm.
Like their charge is going to be really solid, but once they're stuck in, they're going to have a much harder time. Whereas the Wookiees are like the heavy infantry. Might take a little bit longer to get there, but once they get there, they're going to be swinging for a sustained period of time.
Mm-hmm. All right, if people are dealing with your Tauns, that just allows your Wookiees to come running in.
Is the Rebel support slot the worst support slot of the 4 factions?
Now? No.
What does Gar have? I feel like Gar doesn't have any great.
Barks are pretty good though at their current
I guess
cost.
Barks are reasonable now. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think they went from being the second best to the worst with this update.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, everything was triple Tauns or triple RTs.
Yeah. But nowadays their support options look really bad. So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they're that much farther behind Republic for whatever it's worth.
No, but I think they are farther behind.
Yeah, totally. Barks at least are like decent activation padding, but that's only because everything else the Republic is doing is not so great anymore.
Yeah, And Empire, I think Empire would also be worse if they didn't have, if dewbacks weren't what they are now.
Yeah,
Right,
but
like, I don't think,
you can't say that they're even close to worse when they have an S tier support unit.
yeah. But like speeder bikes and especially E-webs are both not very good.
No, they're not. You're right. All right, heavy support, AA5.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this at a B. Now, I think old AA5 definitely an S, no doubt about it. Pretty clear. With the timing adjustments, I think it's probably a B. I think you've got to have a pretty good reason to put it in your list overall, but I think it'll definitely like do work. So yeah, I'm gonna say B.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it used to be S, now probably B. Right, maybe in the right list it could still be A. I'll have to see how it shakes out, but my gut is saying B based on the timing changes and points increases.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a solid support unit if you plan around it, but it's not a like I'm playing Rebels, so I have an AA5 in my list kind of situation.
Yep.
T47.
Yeah, this is a mega S. This is I'm playing Rebels. I should have a T47 in my list sort of situation. Probably two. And that's the world we live in. I don't know. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I also think S. I think if you're not playing Wookiees, you're playing air speeders, but you can also just play both together. And I think, yeah, I think it's a super strong S unit. Great against armor. I mean, pretty much great against everything. Dodges melee threats since Wookiees can't hit them. Right, takes out stuff that you're hiding in the back line. Shreds your vehicles. Yeah, good at objectives. All around amazing.
How is it that Wookiees plus air speeders was not a thing until like the day before the next points update? Like that list did not change since 2020.
I think it was more people were doing AA5s, I think potentially, because right, like in your head it synergizes more. Right. The bus supports your Wookiees, so on and so forth.
Sure, but like the AA5 wasn't even a thing for the first half of 2020. Like Wookiees and the T47 were buffed to basically their current existence levels almost a year ago, more than a year ago.
Yeah, but people didn't really start picking up Wookiees too much. So I think it was people knew that airspeeder was good, but I don't think people had really leaned into how strong the Wookiees were at that point. Right, like I know a lot of people were doing 12 activation airspeeders back then, right? That was two last
Yeah.
Invader League?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 activation airspeeders, they're seeing a lot of. And so I think people were just kind of ignoring Wookiees, and the buses came out, some more people tried Wookiees and were like, oh, Wookiees are super strong. And yeah.
Yeah, I think the answer is Wookiees have been low key really, really good, and people haven't been playing them.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting how like you can have sort of these undiscovered combos for a very, essentially a very long time. Like the meta takes time to settle, even when nothing changes, basically.
I also think that like people starting to play like armor has made the T47s a lot better. Like they just like pop buses like it's their job.
Yeah, that's true.
If somebody parks anything that has the armor keyword on the other side of the table, you all of a sudden feel super glad you brought T47s, right? And I also think like the Wookiees just like are like a really good answer to things like Rexstar, and make up for some of the things that the air speeders are bad at against Rexstar.
Yeah, you kind of have the trifecta between those two unit combos, right? You've got anti-armor and mobility with the T47, and then you've got anti-melee/melee and pierce with the Wookiees.
Yeah, and like a lot of dice, frankly.
Yeah.
To like, you still like hold your own against separatists, which rebels traditionally have trouble with because they don't roll a ton of dice.
Yep. Yeah, T47s are great against B1s.
Yeah.
It's like, pick up your unit, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that cover you had. Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna just flank you, and if you could just pick up all those B1s, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, 6 dead B1s. Here's another 6 dead B1s.
Yeah. All right. X34. land speeder.
Yeah, I'll say C. I don't think it's bad, but I definitely think it's the worst out of the three options, probably. Um, so I don't know. We'll see where like the Shriv R2 thing pans out. And taking like a 60-point land speeder with Shriv plus R2 in the chamber seems like it's 100 points for craziness.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think for the Shriv R2 combo in particular, puts it at C for me. I think outside of that, it's probably F, because you just way rather have air speeders. I mean, even with that combo, I think you still probably want air speeders. But the fact that you can just stick R2 in that thing, give him a suppression, he can't be shot, he can repair it, and you can just like drop him off in the end zone. I think that's a pretty sweet combo.
I actually think now, because they did make the weapons cheaper in the recent update, I think there's kind of an interesting case to be made for like a Shriv R2 and then throw the like either a Gonk droid or the other one, the one that lets you double tap on there with a rocket gunner and an ion blaster, and then it's 136 points, which is a little more than airspeeder, but a much stronger attack against armor with ion. Could be potentially pretty interesting. Maybe it's overkill. It's probably overkill.
But... Yeah, I mean, shoot, recover, astromech is pretty strong.
Yeah.
Just as a double tap, I do think that there is probably something there. I haven't personally tried it, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it like C, because I think there could be some undiscovered combos here. But this is also easily the most competitive heavy slot of all the four factions. So it's only a C because it is sort of hiding behind the spotlight of its counterparts, not because it's not a good unit.
Yeah, funny that the Rebels are now the heavy faction.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Rebels have all the good heavies, and all of the Rebel heavies are repulsor vehicles.
Yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence either.
Yeah, I mean, mobility is really important right now. So, I don't think that's a coincidence at all. All right, we've done it.
We have. That wasn't so bad.
No. Do we need to build any lists? I don't know if I'm prepared to just like hit build a list.
No, I don't think we need to build that.
Okay.
List. I think overall, outside of a couple F tier units, the rebels are in a decent spot.
Yep.
They definitely don't lean on their core. They definitely so here's a question. Let's assume the Wookiees get nerfed. Let's assume the Wookiees are like 10 points more expensive, just for the sake of argument.
That'd be too much, but yeah, let's assume that.
Okay. That's fair. I think that is like a reasonable place thing that could happen. I'm not saying, regardless. Let's say that there's a world where Wookiees are a lot less good than they are now, just for whatever reason. Points, they revert their erratas, whatever. Yep. Where does that leave Rebels? Is Rebels like a linchpin of the Wookiee faction, or do they have enough going on that's not Wookiee to be good, like super good?
I think you could do some of the T-47 still, like a T-47 Sabine, maybe with Clan Ren, something like that. Could still be solid. Great bombing run, super mobile. You got solid flanking units.
Yeah, I think they probably would be fine. There's a little bit of a danger in a world where like, they nerf both Wookiees and T-47s and then don't do anything else to any of the other units. You get a situation like we have now with Republic where it's like, all right, so they were doing this one thing, which was really good, and they hammered that one thing, as they should have. But like now, what else do they have? And I think that's an open question right now with Republic. I think the fact that I can't confidently answer this question that you're posing now with Rebels means that they could be in a similar spot, potentially.
Yeah.
But I don't know. there's a lot of good there's a lot of good building blocks in here that have always been good building blocks, but I don't know. I guess we'd have to see. I think the next best thing that they would have going for them would be sort of an old school style, like force user gun line. But I'm not sure that's really a thing you can do right now. So
Fair enough. I'm just curious because it just strikes me that a lot of the decisions that we made today in our tier list are definitely based on there's pretty much 3 Wookiees on every list, right?
Yeah. And I think Wookiees probably need to get a little bit of a points bump. I wouldn't go so far as to make it 10 points. But,
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty clear that the best rebel lists right now include some fashion of Wookiees or T-47s or both.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, bring Wookiees, bring T-47s. They were good before the points change, and they're still really good.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, come check me out on Wednesday night, which by the time you hear this will be tonight, to hopefully take on some clones with my own Wookiees, Republic Wookiees, not Rebel Wookiees, but Wookiees nonetheless. It is not quite I thought about bringing the maximum possible quantity of Wookiees, which would be 3 Wookiee units plus Chewbacca plus a Wookiee chieftain. But I chickened out and I brought Rex. So yeah.
Can you not fit all of that with Rex?
No, because Chewbacca for Gar is a
he's a commander.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a shame.
So yes, it would be illegal. But I think if you're going to do that list now that Rex is more expensive, I think you could try it and just hard swap Chewie in for Rex.
Yeah, just another thing to rush in with.
I mean, you think that the losing Call Me Captain is worth that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But it's a way to run the list still, if you want to get rid of Rex.
Sure. Yeah. No, I feel you. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe that list is just not a thing after the points update.
I don't know. I mean, I'm putting it together right now. I don't know. We'll see.
I've had some silly Call Me Captains so far running this.
Yeah,
list, I will say that. Some really silly Call Me Captains.
I mean, okay. Let's go back in time, real quick. 6 months, we had a conversation on here when I was playing Rexstar last season. And I think I said something to the effect of, I think Rex's best command card is Call Me Captain, not Take That Clankers. And I remember everybody freaking out and be like, no, you're crazy.
I think I agreed with you.
Maybe. I don't know. I remember being like, oh my God, you're crazy. There's no way. But you think
it wasn't true before, it is now.
Oh, it definitely is now. 100%.
I was gonna say, I think back then, right, the Take That Clankers aim stacking was kind of what made Rexstar a thing. I think if you took away the old Take That Clankers, but kept Call Me Captain, the old Rexstar would be significantly weaker. Versus you could take out Call Me Captain, just makes it weaker against aggressive lists, which wasn't as much of a thing at the time. Whereas nowadays, right, we're talking about Wookiees and Magna Guards and Dewbacks. I think that flips that script a lot. And then also considering that Take That Clankers has been nerfed, the clone keyword has been nerfed, all that piles down to that.
Well, and before, the Call Me Captain was itself primarily just used as a defensive hedge against aggressive lists, rather than as a plan A in your own aggressive list,
yes.
Which is what I've been doing with it. It's pretty good in that context. So, yeah. Still a really good card. Anyway,
I just wanted to put that out.
Yeah, no, I'm if I was not on that train before, I definitely am now.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I had one game where I used it, I think 7 times in one turn.
Oh, those turns are so silly. You just win the game. You just
kill
win
everything.
the game.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I got to add 21 red dice to my attacks this turn.
Yeah.
Good game. You know, against any opponent that's not on red saves, that just it's backbreaking. You know.
Yeah, that was my game against Ryan. Stabcast Ryan.
Yeah, and you could still you could do that back in the day. You would just like take an arc strike team and split fire, right? And it's still super impressive. You're just being way more proactive about it now.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to charge Rex into range 2 of your army because I also have a bunch of other stuff in range. And if you want to try and kill Rex on the first activation, go nuts. I'm going to start popping off one fire support after another for as long as he's alive.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that like even if you kill Rex, that means you're getting charged by Wookiees, and nothing is going to stop it, right? So like
exactly,
it's just like Rex isn't even the thing that's killing you there, at least not at first.
It becomes like reckless diversion basically in that context.
Yeah. And just being able to like seize on the Wookiee chieftain at the same time to kind of like ensure the like 1-2 punch, it's so good. Ugh.
Yeah. It's pretty gross. The Wookiee Chieftain melee pool with Call Me Captain is, if he has Tenacity activated, it is 6 red, 2 black, 2 white.
Yeah, he's got Duelist, and he probably has an aim token, and he probably, yeah.
It's gross. All right. Anyway, enough about that. Yeah. I got nothing else.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Wookiees good.
Wookiees are good.
Yeah.
There we go. There you go. That was pretty good. Yeah. All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm Lucas.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.